Overall, give me your impression of last night. I mean, it clearly was not great for Bernie Sanders. How bad do you think it was?
I mean, there's still we're far from someone hitting the 1991 delegate threshold. So I'm trying not to be too doom and gloom. I mean, you don't want to give up. That's the thing. Like when you're taking on a corporate or political machine, it's not going to be easy. And I think it's important that everybody understands that. You're going to get knocked down, you're going to get licks and bruises. Like it is brutal. It's a brutal slog. And there's going to be moments where you feel demoralized and you feel upset. And the important thing to do is to carry on, because progressive change doesn't happen overnight. Systemic change certainly doesn't happen in an instant, and one person really can't do it all. So it's taking the football as far as you can, passing it off to the next person. So it's important that everyone understands that no matter what happens, we can't give up on this fight. Like we have to continue pressing for these things that we believe in.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. In the live video that I did before the show, I pointed out that if Bernie Sanders tapped out when it got tough or when he lost his first race, we would not be talking about Bernie Sanders right now. We would not know who Bernie Sanders was. He never gave up, and it might be, again, we don't want to be too doom and gloom, but it might be possible that he is going to be handing off the ball metaphorically rather than bringing it home himself. But the ball has come as far as it has because of the fact that he's never just tapped out on this fight.
Right, and he's inspired a new wave of people to get involved in politics and think about these issues. He normalized conversations around universal health care. He helped normalize conversations around the Green New Deal. I mean, that inspired people like AOC to run for Congress, who then went on to introduce it. So we have to understand that, again, it's not just one person. And speaking of AOC, last night in her Instagram live stream breaking down the results, she talked about this. Like we can't just go from person to person and expect them to be our hero. We have to understand this is a collective effort. Like progressive grassroots mobilization and campaigns and fights, or it is a collective effort. So we have to understand that we all need to put in a little bit of work to make these things reality.
Exactly. So let's turn to the debate. Sunday's debate is apparently going to be on. Clyburn apparently isn't going to get his way and have it canceled. As far as we know, it will happen, although there won't be any sort of crowd because of COVID-19. What do you think Bernie Sanders' strategy should be to get maximum benefit out of this debate?
So I think Sanders' strategy in the debate is going to be hitting Biden on his policies or lack thereof, and hitting him on his terrible voting record. I mean, you just draw so many contrasts between the two. Joe Biden voted for the Defense of Marriage Act in the mid-90s, which federally recognized a marriage between one man and one woman. That is a anti-LGBTQIA+ initiative that Bernie Sanders opposed. I mean, Bernie Sanders has a long track record of supporting that community. You could point to the Iraq War vote. Sanders led the opposition to the war. Biden cheered it on before and after. Yeah. You could talk about Joe Biden's record on Social Security. You could talk about the crime bill. You could talk about all these different things that Joe Biden represents that are status quo or worse that Sanders has opposed for decades. So highlighting those contrasts, despite the lack of an audience, I think could be a winning strategy.
Yeah, and it sucks. It just sucks that Bernie Sanders has to try to educate the entire country about who Joe Biden is and what he has been as a politician, because the media has either no interest in doing it or actively does not want people to know, especially on issues like the Iraq War, where I guess we can't be too surprised that a bunch of people who cheerlead for war aren't gonna point out that this guy was wrong to vote for that same war. But yeah, there's this huge additional burden on Bernie Sanders because the media refuses to do their job.
Right, I mean, this is classic manufacturing consent. That was a war propagated on obvious lies. Sanders and multiple other senators saw right through it, but Biden led the fight on the left to go into war. He talked about it in 2002. There's records of him cheerleading a military aggression towards Iraq, and then even justifying it later on. So. Yeah, this is a war that the media were main cheerleaders for, and they were banging the war drum because war helps their ratings. It helps sell papers. You cannot deny how those two things are interconnected. Chris Hedges lays this out in War as a Force That Gives Us Meaning. Like this is something that we all kind of rally around. There's like a national rallying around the flag effect. So to highlight that contrast would be essential for Sanders. But again, like you said, the media has given Biden a pass. Like they haven't really vetted him. They haven't talked about any of these policy deficiencies, any of these terrible votes. But they're going to go back to like public access TV from Burlington, Vermont in 1982 to find like Sanders saying something really wonky.
Yeah, and by the way, that effect that the media has already had on the race is not going to simply end now. If Bernie Sanders like lays out the differences very clearly, if he's aggressive in going after Joe Biden, like we have to be ready for the fact that the reaction from the media is going to be universally negative, condemning Bernie Sanders for daring to point out where Joe Biden has been wrong. And so, if you're watching this right now, prepare yourself.
Right, and to that point, like the narrative around Biden has always been is he's electable. Well, these are the same people that told us that Hillary Clinton was electable, that Hillary Clinton had a lock on 2016, that Donald Trump had no chance. So and this is a purely subjective analysis, right? This is just subjective commentary that they're projecting onto the race, and now people are believing it. When people just accept what they see on TV or what they hear in the media as gospel, like, and how that you cannot overstate how that influences voter perceptions of candidates, especially when you have those types of things shaping debate questions, like the extremity questions around Bernie Sanders. Almost every debate, there was a question lodged, about how he's too extreme or too far to the left. And that gave everyone a launching pad to attack him. I mean, nothing like that ever happened to Biden. They didn't have any other candidate tee off on Biden as frequently as they did with Sanders. So this narrative around electability is one that's really been bothering me because again, it's purely subjective. But now, even in this press conference, Sanders said that their campaign has been overwhelmed with people saying, "I love what you stand for. I like all your ideas, but I think Joe Biden is electable." They have no way of proving that.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.